I'm a feminist, but this week I considered starting a new British far-right party. Stay with me. Because I don't know if you've heard that Robert Lowe MP was thrown out of Reform UK and has started a new competitive, even further right party called Restore Britain. So now we've got Reform and Restore, which has immediately sent the comment section into spin, dividing everyone off and splitting the vote. Well, I'm with Rupert, I'm going to stay with Rob. So I thought, what if to confuse far-right voters at the ballot box, I started a fake one called Refresh and another one called Regurgitate and then one called Retrain in Cyber.
Yes.
Any more ideas? Reject, reanimate. I just think we could do a few. And then people go, I don't know, which is the one with this? Which is the one with this?
Reduce, recycle,
Rejuvenate.
Reuse,
very good. That sounds like a face cream, which I like. And I just think that it'll just send everyone into a spin and completely split the vote. I've not ruled it out entirely.
No, I think it's probably way more effective form of protest than, some of the things we're already doing. Okay. So I'm a feminist, but I kind of feel like we should give Andrew a little bit more media training or something. Like, there's gonna be a lot of pictures of him. How does he not know how to take one? Like, I've lived in this country for over a decade. What I know is every time there's a scandal, there's a caravan of Range Rovers carting someone away. And those things are like they're like fish tanks. Like, you can see everything as soon as the paparazzi flashbulb goes off. How do they not know how to have a contemplative pose when they're in their back seat? He looks like a desiccated tree stump reanimated by like some evil woodland creature. And like, even when his father did it, when he looked really bad, he looked like Nosferatu in that front seat. And how did he not learn the lesson of we can see everything in there? Do it prayer hands or something. Just look pensive. Like, try. Come on. I just feel like it's almost as horrifying as the crimes he's accused of committing. Like, the picture will stay with me into the next lifetime. All right, it's bad.
You're not wrong. But if you were asked, if you heard from his, well, it wouldn't be the palace anymore, but from his PR, if they said, Desiree, you're a charismatic woman, you're a comic, you always look great in photos, you've always got a good pose, would you come? We'll give you $5,000 to work with Andrew on his I've just been arrested face.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Then he'll have to have I've just been convicted face.
Yes.
And and then he'll probably do, if he does time, he'll do 3 months in a sort of white collar butler.
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't immediately get on a plane now that they've taken him back home and just dip to some island that nobody knows about. You know what I mean? He's
I think
a
everyone
flight risk, is he not?
I think everyone knows about the island now.
Yeah, exactly. Islands keep popping up in the ocean all the time. He could disappear to so many places. We need to keep an eye on that one for sure.
Wow. But do you think he's just going to make a run for it?
I think he would. I think he has every possibility and capability of doing that right now. But I think he doesn't quite understand that there are crimes, he's committed them, we're taking this seriously. I
think he gets it now just from the look on his face.
You would think.
I think he has not got it up until now.
But maybe he's trying to conjure a new island to disappear to. I think he would run. I really do.
So you would, but just yes or no, would you take the $5,000?
I would make it at least 15. Come on, Mike. I mean, do you know what I mean? You can't pretend you're that broke. You were hanging out with that guy who was a financier among all of the other horrible things he was. So you're not that broke. And then I would just probably show up with a bunch of 90s hip hop album covers, because they have a lot of good poses, just doing a lot of this and some deep, you know what I mean? But I would rinse him for the money. Come on.
I mean, all good thoughts. I'm a feminist, but I admit that after Rupert Lowe MP broke away with his new far, far, far right party, Hunt, I was actually sitting around waiting for Nigel Farage to break his silence, because no one speaks anymore. Everyone breaks their silence. Yes, I'm a feminist, but I wanted to hear what Farage said. And he actually said, did you see this speech? He said that Rupert Lowe had said that we had to consider the mass deportation of entire communities, including those born in the UK, and that, this is Farage's words, moves past the point of reasonableness, decency, and morality. And so we had to get rid of him. When Nigel Farage is saying you're not reasonable, decent, or moral on immigration, you've really got to have a good hard smize in the mirror, don't you?
Okay. So I'm a feminist, but as a woman deep into my 40s, when other women in their 40s go, you know, it's so great being over 40 because I no longer care what society thinks about me, I just think, society stopped thinking about your old ass a decade ago, baby. I hate to break it to you. Society has been built by guys who clearly like 14-year-olds. Society's a fucking parasite. Like, do not care what society thinks about you to begin with, I would say. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's such a good point. We're in denial for so long.
Like, I don't even care. It's like, oh, good, you've caught up. Great.
Oh my God. We're basically all Prince Andrew in denial till they come and take us away. Fucking hell. I'm a feminist, but last weekend I got into an actual fight with 3 strangers at a train station about Wuthering Heights. So what happened was, this is a true story. I was waiting out the front of a train station in an English seaside town, a gentrified English seaside town. And I don't need to say it's gentrified, you'll know it is by this story. It's implied. There were 3, I think, actors, by the way they were talking. They were talking about someone was cast in that, and she was in that, and now she's in this. So I'm pretty sure they were actors. And one of them said, they were talking about stuff, and then one of them said, I've got my tickets for Wuthering Heights this weekend. I know it's going to be shit. I can't wait to hate it. And then there were 2 women and a man, and the man said, if there was one human being I could stop making a movie ever again, it would be that woman. And I know it's going to be shit, and I don't like period films or TV shows. I've never seen Pride and Prejudice. I don't read period novels. But I know it would be terrible. And I was just like, oh my God. And then they all just stood there sort of slagging her off and slagging it off until I just couldn't wait any longer. And I just said, hey guys, very charmingly, I thought, Desiree, very charmingly.
Hey you
guys, I'm just going to put it out there. If there's one person you can stop making films forever, there is a list of men who, have done really terrible things. Have you seen some of the Woody Allen content in the Epstein files? I'm just going to put it out there. And I said sort of something like, is it possible? I'm not saying you can't critique anyone's art. I'm just saying I think we need to devote less time and energy critiquing the women making movies and more critiquing the men making everything worse. And he said, I said something like that, and he just said, don't insert yourself here. I know, that's exactly what I thought. And I just said, you were talking so loudly, and it was like a big performance. I didn't say it was a big performance, but it was. It was this big ostentatious performance. And I just said, you were kind of inviting somebody to say something. And I said, isn't it fun when people get involved in, a cultural conversation? And he went, not with your energy. And I said, well, I find your energy misogynistic, sir. And then the others went, he's not misogynistic. And I went, so he said, we're not misogynistic. I said, no, you 2 are women. You can have whatever opinion you like. You are a misogynist, sir. And then I turned on my heel and I walked away. Fortunately, the car had arrived to pick me up. My friend had come to get me, because otherwise it would have been really, really awkward. It was just such great timing that sort of car swept up and I got in it, a limo had arrived for me. But what I wanted to say is I'm actually a screenwriter, and I wanted to say, are you an actor, to that man? And then I think he would have said yes, in which case I would have said, well, I'm a screenwriter. If I ever see your headshot come, I will just say absolutely no. Because the thing is, if he knows anything about anything, writers don't really get to say. But sometimes they'll let you say no. They absolutely won't care if you say, but this is the one. They'll just go, we don't care, we don't agree.
I'm a feminist, but as somebody who's very deep into her perimenopause, as I am watching my face change, who in my 20s would be like, why are these people injecting their faces and getting all this stuff done? The minute this fucking chin falls to my tits, I'm snapping it back up with a goddamn rubber band around my head. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I'm not gonna walk around with a neck pussy. I've seen the results, and it could happen. It could happen to you tomorrow. I can't be the one. Is that yeah?
I can't really ask for more than neck pussy. Museum of Comedy in London. The Spontaneity Shop presents The Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Frances-White. Guest co-host Desiree Burch and our very special guest, Professor Roger Griffin, talking about fascism. Hello, and welcome to the Guilty Feminist Road to Gilead. I know. Thank you so much for coming out of Friday night. You're real feminists, aren't you? Not like those Wednesday night feminists, those Monday night feminists. It's easy to be a feminist early in the week, but Friday night, you just want a fucking gin and tonic and to watch heated rivalry. But no, you're here out doing feminism on a Friday night in a tiny basement of a church. We've gone a bit smaller because we wanted to have more shows. So we thought more shows. We'll do lots of shows in different neighbourhoods, in basements. It'll feel really grassroots. And I have to say, this does feel like we're resisting something, doesn't it? I mean, comfort for a start, resisting comfort, but we're also, I do love this venue. I love the people and I love the kind of atmosphere of it. The chairs are slightly uncomfortable, but not as uncomfortable as the rise of fascism. And that is what we're discussing tonight. Yes. That's going to be, authoritarianism is so much less comfortable than these seats. So it's just getting into practice. You know, like in Succession when they were practicing to go to jail. So they were going and eating bad food and things like that. That's sort of what this is. Because when the resistance comes, we're all going to be huddled up in basements. We find it's either very cold or very hot in here. Welcome. Now, I think too cold at the beginning. By the end of the show, you will be taking off layers. And this is the only layer I've got, so this could get a bit burlesque. So here we are. Thank you so much for coming. Are you on for a bit of fascism fighting tonight? Excellent, excellent. So the Road to Gilead is called the Road to Gilead because, just in case you don't know, this is a Road to Gilead project. It's a series of shows and other activities and events where we are specifically taking on the far right, Christian nationalism, not Christianity. If you're a person of faith, you're very welcome. I don't know why I'm pointing at you. You just look a bit like you were raised in a convent. Yeah. Were you? Were you? No. Not at all. Not at all? Oh, interesting. That was so not at all. I wonder where she was raised now. But Christian nationalism, which is just the dogma to abuse power, and so we're looking at what's happening in the United States of America and other Western countries, in our own country, the rise of authoritarianism, and we're saying what can we actually do about it? Because there was a time when we would just go to a march and then we would post something on our stories on Instagram, and then we would sign a petition and we'd say, "I'm done. Is the traitors on yet?" And that's not going to work anymore. We're going to have to actually go, what will move the needle? And it's Road to Gilead because Gilead is a pop culture reference about a dystopian future where especially women and queer people are distressed and oppressed, but it's absolutely dreadful for everyone. And we're not calling it Road to Gilead because we want to be on that road, just that we feel we might have missed the turn-off. And we're looking for a roadside services so we can do a U-turn. Welcome. What's happened since I saw you last? Well, it was Prince Andrew's birthday this week. I hope he had a nice day. Did anyone get invited to his party? What's that? It was cancelled, you say? What will all his teddy bears do, missing that incredible annual picnic? They must be so disappointed. Brotherly rivalry runs deep in that family, doesn't it? Andrew was his mum's favourite, but she died. Spoiler if you haven't been watching the news, and left Charles in charge. Charles in charge of our days and our nights. Charles in charge of our wrongs and our rights, but mostly our wrongs, as it turns out. You all know that song, don't you? Yeah. It's from a sitcom, American sitcom. Yeah. Yeah, and then parodied in Scrubs in the nights. This is, if you watch television at any time in the last 4 decades, if you don't know the song, learn the song. I can teach it to you. Charles in charge of our days and our nights. Charles in charge. If the men could do that, how many men are in? Just give us a cheer if you identify as a man. There you are. Excellent. We have more men. This is what I've noticed. We have more men the more male guests we're having. Representation matters. We used to be pretty much only for women and people of minority genders. Very occasionally we'd have a man on if he begged. But now I'm just like, who knows about fascism? And I don't care who that is, frankly. I will get them here. But I have noticed, since I've had a few men on stage, men are going, we're welcome here. I do expect this will be entirely man-run by the end of the year. Now, anyway, so I heard a pundit who knows about royal families and things, saying when Charles stripped Andrew of his title and told him to get out of Royal Lodge, it was basically a signal to Scotland Yard saying, come and get him, boys. Did you know this? Yeah, it was the signal, come and get him. But in some ways, I think stripping him of the title now distances the royal family from his crimes. Like, he's not a prince, he's just Andrew, just Andy. But he's not one of us, no. But he was a prince when he did it, wasn't he? The nonce formerly known as Prince. He was the grand old Duke of York, who had 10,000 men to help him cover it up, apparently. Did you see the picture of Andrew coming back from being arrested? If I have a note, it's that he wasn't smizing. And if Tyra Banks taught us anything in the noughties, it was how to smize. You know, smile with your eyes. And if she taught us anything else, she didn't. She traumatized us. Did anyone else see the Netflix doc or clips from the Netflix doc about America's Next Top Model and the horror show that it was? Does anybody else remember not being shocked at the time by how young women and girls were treated on the show? Apparently, we all had Stockholm Syndrome. That we all had to look like underfed, sexy children with crop tops, with animated characters on that showed glimpses of a concave midriff. I wonder who started that fashion trend and why. Well, we have the answer this week. It was Les Wexner, the man whose name is basically Lex Luthor. You may remember the scandals around Abercrombie and Fitch, his shop. The sexualizing of staff, refusing to make large sizes because they wanted everyone to look like a hungry child. And the CEO, Mike Jeffries, it's been done for sex trafficking. So Les Wexner also famously owned Victoria's Secret. Cat's out of the bag now, Victoria. We know what the secret was. Fucking hell. And he invented and founded a store called Limited 2, which was fundamentally the invention of the tween culture. So this is Limited 2. There's a grown-up shop called The Limited, or there was, and then he founded, it was his idea. He came up with Limited 2. And if you Google it, you will see that the internet says it was explicitly created in 1987 as a specialized clothing brand targeting the tween market, roughly ages 7 to 14. It was a pioneer in focusing on this demographic, capitalizing on the growing fashion awareness of young girls, for which read inflicting crop tops, rhinestone baby tees, low-rise jeans, cut-off denim shorts, and actual thong underwear for young girls 7 to 14. Now, the word tween had been invented before, but he popularized it and created tween culture. You can absolutely take it back to this man. Later, this shop rebranded under a different name. Do you know what the name of that shop was?
Disney shop?
No word of a fucking lie. It was called Justice. And that may be all the justice we're ever going to see. Les Wexner, I always want to call him Lex Luthor, was this week on the stand at the Epstein hearing in the USA. He's 88. I'm going to read you part of the transcript of Les Wexner's deposition. Question. Did you yourself write this letter to Mr. Epstein for his birthday book? Wexner. Sadly, I did. Question. Mr. Wexner, would you read it for the record, please? Wexner. I wanted to get you what you want, so here it is. Happy birthday, your friend Leslie. And what was your understanding of what Mr. Epstein would want? Well, he was a bachelor, so I drew a pair of boobs. Then he laughs like he's Beavis and or Butthead. Mr. Wexner, you've said a few times today that you did not consider Mr. Epstein a friend of yours. However, you've signed this letter, and I quote, your friend Leslie. Why would you sign your friend Leslie to someone you did not consider to be a friend of yours? I don't know. Yeah, we don't either, Lex Luthor. We don't either. During his deposition, Wexner's lawyer was caught on a hot mic saying into his ear, I will fucking kill you if you answer another question over 5 words, okay? And I thought, how do we know he said that? Did someone lip read? What do we know? Oh no, it's incredibly audible. He whispered it into the microphone. It's just like, I will fucking kill you if you answer another question over 5 words. And then Lex Luthor laughed like Beavis and Butthead again. But he referred to Epstein as a bachelor. He was a bachelor, and that's why I drew boobs. What a euphemism for rapist, cannibal, paedophile. And I don't need to say allegedly there, because Epstein is dead, and you can't libel the dead. Still, belt and braces, eh? Allegedly. Just in case. Just in case he's not dead. Just in case, allegedly, a rapist, paedophile, cannibal, yeah, just allegedly. In other euphemism news, prominent US agent Casey Wasserman is selling his talent agency, saying in a company-wide email, because of his links to the Epstein files, he's becoming a distraction. Hopefully he'll be a convicted distraction soon. So that's this week. That's this week in a roundup of the most horrifying news. I hope you enjoyed it. And if not enjoyed it, hated it. Thank you very much. All right, are we ready to start the show? Then please welcome to the stage my incredible co-host for this evening is the wonderful Desiree Burch.
Could this be more cramped at all? Hello, how are we doing? Hi.
We're doing the resistance underground.
I know, this is amazing.
Are you starting to sweat yet?
It's not a rally unless you're sweating. Come on, guys. The revolution can't start if we're not breaking a sweat.
Absolutely.
No? Oh, yes.
It's well
played. I mean, do you want to do a tight 5? Come on up here. Allegedly, I suppose.
Well, that's our guest.
Yes.
That's our guest who's heckling with some solid Prince Andrew material there.
Yes.
Absolutely solid. Solid. If you didn't hear at the back, he said some people can't sweat medically. This is The Guilty Feminist, the podcast in which we explore our noble goals as 21st century feminists and the hypocrisies and insecurities which undermine them. I'm Deborah Frances-White. With me is Desiree Burch, and we are talking about fascism. But before we get into that, how are you, Des?
Yeah, I'm all right. I mean, I don't know. That's what we say in this country. Yeah, I'm all right, right?
Yeah.
Everything's a waking nightmare, but I'm good. Right now, I can forget about that. I'm with you.
As an American, is there not some part of you that wants to go, awesome? Or have you been here too long?
I mean, I feel like rarely, before I lived here, I lived in New York, and nobody in New York says it's awesome. They're just like, if you're like, how are you? They're like, fuck you. So I think being like, yeah, I'm all right is a happy medium. Being from LA, like, yeah, I could be like, totally cool, dude. But like, I love those people. They can be happy because they don't know what the fuck is happening. It's so nice.
It's so true. That's a sort of ignorance is bliss position.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. Whereas we can say, here it's sort of can't complain, people say, things like that.
Yeah, although people were like, I can't complain.
Can.
I'm like, try. It's fun.
Yeah. But also,
it's really useful.
Everyone who says can't complain immediately does.
Yeah.
I don't trust it. I don't trust it. Would you like to see some stand-up comedy now?
No.
Then please welcome to the stage the incredible Desiree Burch.
That's a welcome right there. Now, that's the distance I like. I don't, need that much more of a ramp. So, when I think about the prospect of having kids and why I chose not to, I kind of have to think back to my childhood. Like, in part, I definitely didn't want to do it because I was already being adultified at home, like, by my parents, right? Like, I'm a Gen X kid. My mom just treated her 4 kids like we were short, stupid adults who didn't know stuff yet. Like, so she just informed us of things that I never wanted to know. Like, I was 8 years old watching cartoons, and she just flounced in the room like, well, obviously your father's cheating on me. I was like, okay. And she's like, I mean, I'd love to leave him, but I couldn't afford to with you kids. We'd have to live in the ghetto. And I'm like, can I just watch Fraggle Rock and eat these Lunchables, woman? I'm 8, all right? Can I enjoy my childhood, right? But like, also, it wasn't just at home. I was being adultified at school. Like, in 2nd grade, I'm 7 years old. The other 2nd graders called me Mama Des. Yeah, right? Yeah, like I'm in a 70s folk band. Mama Des? What the fuck? Like, look, I understand. I'm the tall one, I'm the fat one. I'm a gold star fat person. I came out of the womb looking like Buddha. I've stayed this way my entire life. That does not make me class Santa Claus, okay? I am not the emotional support 2nd grader for the other 7-year-olds in my class, right? But I understand, having lived life this long, that like some people come to get viewed as like not their own individual person, but like an NPC in other people's lives. Like people treat you like you're their best friend or the wingman or the shoulder to cry on. And I see some nods of affirmation, right? Of people who've experienced that. Even if you've never experienced that, I guarantee that more people have experienced this analogous feeling. It's not unlike the feeling of rage that overcomes you, particularly women, when you are out with a man in the world and then he turns to you and asks you to hold something in your purse for him. Okay, so that was some assent right over here. That was right. I don't understand why it's a white hot burning rage, but like he like you're at a farmer's market. He's bought some bathtub beer off a dude he talked to about Warcraft with for like 45 minutes. Then he looks around. He's like, I don't want to carry any of this stuff. Looks like you're carrying a lot of bullshit. What's one more thing? And you're like, I'm gonna throw you into the sun, man. Like, not only do you have all the pockets in all of your clothes, and 35% more income to fill those pockets with. But as soon as you go out and buy something with that money, now I gotta Sherpa your shit around town. Like I'm your wife donkey. Is that what's happening right now? Because the thing is, like, guys, you're always making fun of us for having the handbag in the first place. They're like, what's in here, a bowling ball? And then 40 minutes later, you're like, do you have a pair of scissors? We're like, of course I have scissors. You think this is my first rodeo, man? Like, because you have to understand, a woman's handbag has 3 things in it that make sense and a bunch of neuroses. A bunch of horrible things we're imagining going wrong in the 4 hours we're out of town today, right? Like, if you open up a handbag right now, you'll see a wallet, phone, keys, and then you'll see like a whole little first aid kit in there, a small sewing kit, a bunch of painkillers, the kind of shit you can only get in Mexico, like hardcore stuff, period products for herself and other people. A smaller purse, that's a whole makeup section, right? The inner one. An entire bottle of perfume for some reason. Because God forbid you smell like you did work today, hon. You're like, no. You're like, keys you hold like Wolverine or bear mace, brass knuckles, some kind of weapon, and of course supplies like bruised bananas, crushed granola bars. Like, honestly, if the apocalypse happened outside right now, we could survive in this room for an extra week. Based on all of the decimated snacks. Like, we are prepared. I honestly feel like Boots missed a trick. They should have named that store Handbags, because that's exactly what is in one. It's a miniature bodega inside of each and every single bag. Because essentially, as a woman, we've been told by society, if things go wrong for us, we're on our own. And in fact, other people are gonna come running to us for help when they're in need. So we love being prepared. So I think about that. I'm like, we love being prepared. However, when I got to the perimenopausal part of my life, no one prepared me for any of this shit. Why didn't anybody say anything? Did anybody say anything no, right? And look, I try not to get mad at our mothers and our grandmothers for not saying things. Like, honestly, 10 years ago, you couldn't even say menopause out loud, right? If you said menopause in public, flowers would wilt. Like, shutters would slam, men would get into a taxi and just drive into the ocean. Like, nobody wanted to hear it. So, they just suffered in isolation and silence because they'd witnessed their mothers and grandmothers be lobotomized and tranquilized to within an inch of their lives. So they were just like, shut up and wear your shoulder pads, go to work, right? Right? So, I just kind of feel like, why didn't someone tell me the difference here? And look, here, I will explain it also. So anyone listening to this, if you want to know, because we've all heard of menopause, but that's actually just one day. Right? That is like the 1-year anniversary of the last period you ever have. That day is menopause. Everything after that's post-menopause. The 10 years that lead up to that are perimenopause, right? Just to give you like a metaphor, right? If menopause is me making my final descent into crondom, which is where I would like to go. I would like to finally not worry about unwanted pregnancies or periods. I want to be a witch. I want to go into the forest and cast spells with my new powers of invisibility. Yes, I'm so excited about that, right? Now, if that's the destination, perimenopause is like the turbulence before the plane lands. It makes you go, am I going to survive to make it to the place I bought a ticket for? Like, and if you've ever been in real turbulence, the kind that makes you go, oh my God, is this how I die? Right? There are two kinds of extremes to how people respond to that immediate panic, right? On the one extreme, there is always one woman on that plane praying in Spanish. Every time, head between her legs, ay Dios mío, there's holy water flying, the rosaries are out, and you're like, yes, please pray, please, thank you. On the other extreme, there's always one man on that flight who is asleep. Like masks have dropped from the ceiling. This guy's like, and you're like, how is that possible? What you don't realize as you're boring holes into his head with your energy is that man was smart enough to take drugs before the plane took off. And if you're someone who's gonna go through perimenopause, I recommend the drugs. All right, I'm talking about get all of the HRT, seriously, because at some point in your mid-40s, you are going to think that you need antidepressants, a chiropractor, a divorce lawyer, and an exorcist, okay? And what you need is estrogen. It feels like you got 99 problems, but bitch, you got one. You got one. The problem is this comes with 66 different symptoms, right? And I've been talking about this in my show. Like 66 is a lot of different things to happen to one human being. Dude, if you were watching QVC and someone tried to sell you an air fryer that did 66 different things, you'd be like, let's buy 2 and start a food truck. This sounds amazing. That's almost impressive. I would love to see the advert for perimenopause when I'm up at 3 a.m. like I am all the time these days because of the insomnia. I'd love to see that come onto TV. I'd love to see an advert that says something like, what do you get for the mid-40s woman in the prime of her life who has it all? How about just the bad stuff? With perimenopause, she'll be up all night and fatigued all day. And during the collective 3 hours of sleep she gets every single night, she'll be wet with all that sweat. No, not wet in a sexy way. Never again in a sexy way. No, that pussy's dry. Oh, her skin is dry. Her throat is dry. Her eyeballs are dry. How can she be wet and dry at the same time? Is she detoxing from heroin or taking off on meth? It's all to play for with perimenopause. There'll be hot flushes, cold flushes, 3 flushes every time she goes to the toilet because she can't stop peeing. If any of those symptoms rings a bell, ping, that's tinnitus. It's a symptom too. Oh, there'll be adrenalized surges of venomous rage and suicidal ideation. Now, does she want to kill everyone else or herself? By the time she's walked into the room with the weapon, she'll forget why she's walked in there in the first place. Oh, perimenopause for the mid-40s woman. That should shut her up.
Desiree Burch, everybody! Come take a seat. Come take a seat. Now, we're ready for our guest. Our guest today is a British professor of modern history and a political theorist at Oxford Brookes. He is widely acknowledged to be one of the world's foremost experts on socio-historical and ideological dynamics of fascism. And when I emailed him, I got an email straight back. Often you don't. You email academics, they don't necessarily. They've got a lot of emails and they don't want to come on your podcast, so they just ignore you. Fair enough. I get it. Bishops are worse. I've been trying to get a bishop on for ages. It's not going to happen, guys, unless someone knows a bishop. But when I emailed him, I got an email straight back, and the opening line was, "I finally lived long enough for the feminists to come calling. I cannot wait to talk about all the different flavors that patriarchy comes in."
Wow.
And then he sent me a Bob Dylan song, and I was like, wow, we're going to be friends for life. So I'm so delighted to have him. I've had 2 prep calls, and I'm so fascinated by everything he has to say. Please put your hands together and make incredible woohooing noises for the wonderful Professor Roger Griffin!
Thank you.
So, Roger, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You've come all the way from Oxford.
Yeah, and went to the wrong St. George's Church, which is in New Bond Street, and there was a downpour. And I thought, this doesn't augur well. But then I come to this amazing space you've created here.
Yeah, I mean, we've had nothing to do with it. We're just using it. But it is a sort of adapted church that's also a museum of comedy, a basement museum of comedy. And we really appreciate you for finding it. That was the first test. Finding it in a storm.
Well, when I saw that a crypt had been turned into a comedy club, I thought that if I failed this evening, I could do a spin on the normal obscene little joke. I crept into a crypt, corpsed, and crept out again.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, it's true. Actually, I've never thought, but it's not great for comedians to be performing in a crypt because
I mean,
dying
look,
is bad.
yeah, but killing is great.
That's
so,
true.
you know,
That's true.
just you got one or the other.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're so thrilled that you've come, and you are a leading expert on fascism.
Well, that's what they say.
What is? Can we ask you what is your definition of fascism?
Well, can I first of all put in a disclaimer? Because somebody once said, I think it was Groucho Marx, or who said, whenever an Englishman opens his mouth, there's always going to be somebody who's going to be upset with his accent, that sort of idea. You cannot start talking about fascism without alienating part of the audience, because everybody's got their own little idea of what fascism is. And especially if you come from the left, if you come from a Marxist tradition, a lot of what I will say will actually be quite alienating, because Marxists have their own theory, which they had developed very quickly, very soon after the formation of fascism in 1919. Leading Marxists in Europe were saying, this is not just an Italian thing, this is a new threat to the working class, the working people. They didn't say women at that point because they weren't part of
Women hadn't been invented.
No, you hadn't. No. You still had to sort of break through the patriarchy of working class men. But Marxists, ever since the 1920s, have developed a very sophisticated theory of the relationship between fascism and capitalism, and the exploitation of plutocrats, etc., etc. I come to it from a very different angle, and so I'm quite happy to engage with people in the Q&A session. For a long time after Mussolini's fascism took off, and then Nazism, and you get movements like Mosley's, and there's fascinating specimens in Croatia and Romania, etc., there was very obviously it's called a generic phenomenon. Fascism wasn't just in one country. But there was a huge problem amongst Marxists of what the heck this thing was. And George Orwell, who was a socialist but not a Marxist, already in 1944, he was writing in a journal called The Tribune his desperation at the fact that the word was being used so indiscriminately that it didn't mean anything anymore. And he actually put out a plea. He said, when will we ever get a clear and useful definition of fascism? And that was in 1944. Until the 90s, 50 years later, every book you read and every conference you went to about fascism, the elephant in the room was that there was no consensus at all. Since the 1990s, and I was part of this consensus formation, I have a one-sentence definition which needs a whole book to explain, which it doesn't sell very well. Okay, so here we go. Fascism is a political ideology. Now, that's already contentious. Lots of people have thought it's just a sort of tide of irrationalism, or it's evil, or it's just it's sort of psychotic males or whatever. But it's a political ideology, and it's on a par with things like feminism or conservatism or whatever. And it's definable in terms of what the protagonists of it want. I mean, you don't define feminists in anti-feminist language. You don't define it. I mean, you can say all sorts of things about it, but if you look it up, even in Wikipedia or whatever, it's defined in terms of feminists, or Marxists in terms of Marxists. Fascism for generations has never been, even the Marxist one doesn't say, oh, actually fascists, they don't quote fascists, they say it's a form of capitalism. They're really concealing what they really want, which is to screw the working classes. But fascism is a political ideology, which in its various permutations, it takes lots of very different forms. Romanian fascism is very different from Italian or Greek or whatever, has as a mythic core. That's the bit that drives an ideology. So that, for example, liberalism is associated with a goal of freedom and emancipation from all sorts of things. Communism has an ideal of some sort of communal society based on universal human rights and equality and all that sort of. Now, where's the myth, the mobilizing myth of fascism is to make a nation, conceived often in a racial way, reborn. Why? Because it's decadent, because something's gone wrong with the nation, and it's something that cannot be dealt with using the present system. It can't be solved either by conservatives or because they are basically trying to repeat the past, and it can't be solved through communists because they're actually trying to abolish the nation. Communism is anti-nationalist in theory. Of course, the tragedy is every single communist state that's ever existed is hyper-nationalistic, and so that's one of the great issues about the gap between the idea and the reality. As T.S. Eliot says, between the idea and the reality falls the shadow. And in a way, history is the great shadow that emerges between the ideal and what actually happens. Look at Christianity. Look at all these, anyway. So, but for a fascist, the nation cannot be saved through communism. It can't be saved through conservatism, and communism will just destroy the nation. And it can't be solved through democracy. Democracy is a system based on pluralism and choice, and that cannot work. There has to be a new order in a new nation. And because you've got rid of all the enemies to the nation, and that checklist varies from country to country. And of course, after the Second World War, it's added to by things like multiculturalism or Muslims or whatever. Take your pick. Fluid genders and homosexuality. Well, that was already attacked and homosexuals finished up in concentration camps in the Soviet
and transgender people.
And
there
transgender
was a big
people,
transgender
absolutely, and lesbians. Wow, I mean, lesbians are actually, by not procreating, by actually having a close couple with some of the same gender. I mean, that's the death of your race. I mean, this is real Gilead stuff. So the core myth is the idea of the rebirth of the nation. Now, I needed an adjective from rebirth. Now, there's rebirthing, which is a sort of therapy in California.
Yeah.
It's true. You reenact coming out of the womb, and I mean, it's really... most of the people who want to do that should just crawl back in, basically, but... but you can't talk about a rebirthing nationalism. But I found this neat word, and being I've got a lot of perverted little mental habits, and one of them is I really love finding a word that captures exactly what I was thinking, and I didn't know it existed. And the very word concept comes from the Latin for to grab hold of, and it grabs. And in German it's Begriff, and that's a griff, that's a handle, and then Begriff is a concept. So when you get a concept, those annoying machines in amusement arcades where you constantly, where it's a total rip-off, it's a symbol of capitalism. You've got this, all this hope, and then...
Just
and
So true.
Just smash and grab it all.
And so you're trying to grab. And so I came across this word, palingenetic. Palin... nothing to do with Michael Palin. It means again, like palindrome when it goes back and forth. And Genesis is, apart from being a really cool group in the... palingenetic means reborn. It means it literally means born again. And in fact, when it was originally used, it applied to Jesus Christ. And it also applied in physiology to the way your nails grow back or limbs can grow back. So now, if the idea of a rebirth of the nation, I mean, if you ever can just see the first few minutes, and it's on YouTube, of course, Triumph of the Will. It's the most extraordinary opening. And of course, this is a film that completely refutes the idea that fascism is a purely male thing, because the extraordinary visionary cinematographer of it is Leni Riefenstahl. A lot of people don't realize that after the war, she carried on doing racist photography, but she photographed Namibian Africans, but in a very sort of Aryan way. I mean, I'm not a fascist anymore, but I mean, it was in her DNA, I'm afraid. But this extraordinary film starts off with this statement and this terribly down, depressing music. In 1918, we lost the war. After that, there was total collapse of society, and everybody was desperate, and you go, do-do-doom. And then the music goes up in a Wagnerian ways, and in 1933, war der Anfang der deutschen Wiedergeburt. Of course, Germans don't speak like that. I mean, Hitler, if you know Austrian and you're feeling desperate and you don't know where, you don't recognize your country as your home anymore, and there's this guy which sounds as if he's having a sort of epileptic fit, but actually, if you know German, he was an absolute master of the German language and the rhetoric and the whole thing, and he trained in front of a mirror, and there's all these pictures of him using Shakespearean poses, etc. He knew exactly what he was doing, and the fundamental structure of what he's doing is to evoke the chaos, evoke the decadence, evoke the collapse. He was a great comedian. In one of his most famous speeches,
he never seemed that funny. I never saw anyone laughing.
Yeah, no. They were under their salute.
Just into the
yeah. When people start hiling you, then you've really got problems, I tell you. But he just lists the number of parties that you could vote for in Weimar at an election, and he just comic timing. He says the pensioners have got a party, the farmers have got a party, and he displays this fragmentation of Germany into all these interest groups, each one of which has got their own party. And at the end of that, he said, "But I represent one Germany, one people, one," and this idea of bringing it all together and healing the idea of the nation being wounded and fragmented, etc. And so what we have in someone like Trump, who appeals to exactly the same sort of feeling, America's falling apart, where's the American dream, we're going to make you great again, or this idea of Brexit as somehow restoring Britain. Yes, that sounds a bit fascistic, but do not underestimate just how profoundly fascists are committed to the idea of destroying democracy. What did Mussolini do? He was head of state for 2 years, then he winds up the Italian state, he replaces it with a totalitarian state. Hitler, 1933, he's head of state, he's chancellor, he uses the Reichstag fire, which is probably committed by the Nazis themselves, to suspend the constitution. He creates a totalitarian state. So at the core of the way I try to redefine fascism, which is now the standard approach, it just, not because of me, but because it just reflects what the fascists wanted to do. They either get through the back door of democracy, or they try to have a coup, or in one way or another, they try to conquer power, that's their phrase, and they then try to use the power to get rid of all the fragmentation in society, to purge it of all the things and people and institutions which are meant to be making it sick. And one of the great metaphors of fascism is sickness and health. And that carries on through morally, physically. There's a war in Nazi Germany against handicapped people and all sorts of disabilities. I mean, it's just terrifying how literally this was taken, this obsession with health and infirm. Now, of course, there's elements of that in Trumpism or Putin or whatever, but fascism is incredibly radical, and it's a revolutionary form of nationalism.
So, Roger, can we ask you, so people now say, oh, it's fascist in America. So, but it's easy if you are being arrested on the street by ICE with no warrant, with no recourse to a lawyer, and you're being thrown into internment camp, the reality for you is not very different from fascism.
Well, I would say if you want to use fascism as an expletive, as a slur, as a way of just expressing your absolute horror at the abuse of power by somebody. If that makes you feel better, then call it fascist, hopefully with some supporting adjective that goes in front of it. And that could be a traffic warden or your parent who turns off your gaming machine, or a bureaucrat. I mean.
But you see what I mean in terms of the experience of the person.
Yeah, if they can put it in there emotionally. Yeah. But the question about the word fascism is, if you don't want to use it emotionally, but you want to use it to, I mean, there's a great phrase, know thine enemy. If you find many things about the way power is being used in your society oppressive and frustrating and inhuman, but you want to analyze what's going on forensically. If you want to say, well, what are we dealing with here? And what do these people really want? Then it matters the terms we use.
That's what we want to do tonight.
Yeah.
What is America now? It's not.
Well, I just want to finish that thought, which is the experience under ICE. If you look at what happens to opposition people in Russia or in China, etc. I mean, the thing is, fascism does not have a monopoly of totalitarianism, of secret police, of the treatment of women, etc. You're actually dealing. I mean, you can't say you are a bloody authoritarian, totalitarian oppressor. I mean, fascist is great. I mean,
I think it's the F.
You need that F word.
Down with radical right-wing populism is a horrible thing to put on a poster. I mean, call them a bloody. I have no objection to that. I call it the expletive use of expletive means emptying out. It's cathartic. It's great, but it's not. You can't write as an academic, political scientist. You can't just say. It matters sometimes. And Latin American dictatorships, what they did to students, they torture them and then drop them out of helicopters in the sea so their bodies wouldn't have. And they're called the desaparecidos. But was that fascist? Well, of course, if you're the mother of a student who's been taken off, fascism is what comes to your head, because the most total example of the abuse of state power that is so well documented is the Third Reich. But if it doesn't help you understand that this is an abuse of power that really was capitalist regimes, anti-communist capitalist regimes backed up by the CIA in full sight and by the Catholic Church. So what are we dealing with? I mean,
we need to know more academically, forensically. What are we dealing with now?
Although I will say that the expletive use would probably sell more books.
Yes,
well, I would buy a book called These Fucking Fascists immediately, even if I found out that they weren't all fascists.
How about How to Stop Fucking Fascists? That would be a really good.
More fricatives, yes, always.
The ambiguity would be in the
Fuck
case
off, fucking fascists.
Yes.
Our beginner's guide.
Well, that was the original title of my doctorate, but it ended up being called The Rebirth of Nations, because that's an allusion to a famous American film called The Birth of a Nation. But this is the rebirth
of a nation.
And the word that comes up there, that's the palingenesis. So when we are faced with a Trump, what a horrible idea.
There's no good side.
So this is where, it's a comedy evening, but don't forget, Dante's Divine Comedy is not a great laugh.
This part doesn't have to be funny. It doesn't have to be funny. No. We haven't invited you on to talk about fascism because we expect a punchline every minute.
No.
Every 5 minutes will do.
I did want to ask a question about something you were touching on in terms of the sort of the unclean and also kind of binding society together. I think you've said in your writing that institutionalized misogyny is always a hallmark of fascism and authoritarianism. Why?
Well, there are two questions.
Okay.
It's always a hallmark of one of the most extraordinary patterns is the way fascist regimes tyrannize women. They take possession. There's a wonderful book called Social Bodies, written about you've got to look at demography. All fascists are terrified of dying out. Their race, the worst thing that can happen is your race dies out. So there becomes a deep preoccupation with birth rates and demography.
Now, at the moment, this is all men are talking about on their podcasts. Is
Yes.
why
but
are women?
this is Gilead again. You see, this is where
But there's so many 38-year-old men who have no children banging on about why 22-year-olds don't have, 22-year-old women don't have children. But then they literally talk about why don't we have children? And I've heard them saying, well, I'm sort of self-actualizing. So apparently 22-year-old girls, young women, are going to have to mate, as they call it, with 45-year-old self-actualized podcasters because they need all this time to grow and learn and change and think and drink. But we've just got to be banging out those babies as soon as we possibly can, to the extent of don't even get an education.
I'd want to give you an example of the grotesque lack of sense of humour of Germans, or Nazi Germans, by the way.
If there are any Germans we're sure you... Are there any Germans in? Yes, just give us a cheer.
Towards the end of the Second World War, so many Germans were dying on the Eastern Front that there was a problem of having enough babies after the war or whatever. So it became legally allowed for a woman to marry the helmet of her dead partner.
What?
And
the helmet?
Yeah, and there was the...
You can't fuck a helmet.
Yeah.
What?
It gives a special twist to the name Helmut.
Yes.
But how does that give you a baby?
It was called a Helmtrauung, where you were in a... where pregnant women, in order to legitimize their child, had a ceremony whereby they actually... Can you imagine somebody actually...
just held on a broomstick or something.
Coming down the aisle with the father giving her away, and there, instead of some guy with a ring, there was an SS helmet, and that just shows. And then there's the whole Lebensborn thing, the spring of life, where they were breeding Aryans and all this sort of stuff. There's an obsession with demography and the obsession with not dying out. That is, but again, if you look at all totalitarian regimes, there's a huge control of reproductive power of women, and the fundamental idea, and that is totally caught by Atwood, is that the child belongs to the state, belongs to the people, belongs to the future. The child is not the woman's, and but that's why when you just elide fascism and totalitarianism, they're not the same thing. Fascism, if you did a sort of chart, there's a generic thing called autocracy or tyranny or totalitarianism, and then it breaks down into different types, and there's left-wing forms and right-wing forms, and the extreme right-wing form is fascist. Now, what we're witnessing in a country like America, it's still technically a democracy as an institutional... No, but as a legal constitutional state, it is a democracy. And in fact, today I hope you've heard that the Supreme Court has ruled the tariffs that Trump has been establishing since January is illegal. It's technically illegal. And
do you think that'll stop him, though?
No, but I don't think that's not the point. The point is, can you imagine Hitler being told that it was illegal to round up Jews by a court? In fact, one of the first things that fascist states do is they change the legal system. The Nazis were brilliant. They kept the Weimar legal system for everyday life, and then they created a para system with the Volksgerichte, the people's courts. And do you know that all the people who were rounded up for concentration camps, they were in Schutzhaft, they were in what's it called? In protective custody. Legally, everybody who was picked up and sent to their deaths was in protective custody.
Wow. But we're seeing that with ICE now. We're seeing these internment camps.
Is it parallel? Yes. It is an abuse of power within the state. There's a struggle going on at the heart of America between liberal democracy based on universal human rights, with a whole load of very well-established practices which protect human beings from the arbitrary use of power. Now, these are they're not integral to democracy. If you think of Greek democracy, it was based on a slave state and on the absolute sidelining and oppression of women, and there were a whole load of aspects of Greek society which were nothing to do with liberalism whatsoever. If you think of the American...
early the United States of America was based on enslavement, genocide
the Native Americans
people.
in the American Declaration of Independence are called the savages, and their genocide is somehow inscribed in the document.
This is what really struck me, Roger, when we first spoke, that I was giving you lots of examples of what's going on in America, and you said something so profound to me that I've told other people, and you said...
Probably forgotten now.
You said, Deborah, when did you get the idea that democracy was liberal?
Yeah.
It's brought you slavery, it's brought us colonization, it's brought us a war on women and children, it's brought us genocide, and why do you think that democracy is going to deliver you liberal things? And the way you put it to me was... democracy is only a mechanism by which progressive people can fight for progress. But each time it's a fight. It's the civil rights fight. It is the fight for women to get the vote. It is the fight for people to overturn slavery.
And the vote for women is the precondition for them to be able to fight for their rights. The rights are not given. The concrete enactment of liberty and universal humanism is not somehow magically brought into being by the fact that you've got suffrage. Suffrage is only a precondition. And look at the schizophrenia of all the liberal democratic states which started emerging in 19th century Europe. Belgium, do you associate Belgium with the horrors of the Congo? That was the constitutional monarchy ran the horrors which are charted in the Heart of Darkness. I mean, and how when you study British history in the 19th century, we of course study the fact that Wilberforce and the British put an end to slavery, but we'd been perfecting the slave trade under the rise of liberal democracy, very painful, Parliament and all the civil wars and all that sort of stuff. Democracy is just a mechanism, and it can be... it all depends where the consensus of the people who are really in power put their ring about who is fully human. Normally, historically, only a small white elite of rich people were fully human, and most people had absolutely no access to suffrage, etc., their property rights, etc. So what's happening now is not the fascistization of democracy, but the deliberalization of democracy. And just to take one example, Viktor Orban, Putin's friend, but now Trump's friend, and this is really sinister. You've got people who are around. I mean, there was an emperor called Caligula who once wanted to elect a horse as a consul. Well, I mean, Trump has done this. He's actually surrounded himself with Trumpian horses who have a view of Europe destroying itself through liberal democracy and actively supporting movements like the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, which actually had a neo-Nazi wing at one point, and is overt in the 2016 program of the AfD. There's a simple phrase: "Der Islam gehört nicht Deutschland." Islam does not belong to Germany. Well, what the hell does that mean? Does that mean... I mean, that's a scale of response from marginalization all the way through to deportation or extermination.
So is what we're experiencing now illiberal democracy pandering to right-wing populism?
No. Right-wing populism is the illiberal democracy. Viktor Orban says, I have created in Hungary an illiberal democracy. In fact, academics like me talk about the Orbanization of democracy. All over the world, real democracies, which since 1945 went through a phase of extending rights to children, the poor. I mean, I had a completely free education, etc. That's part of the liberalization of... You can't even dream of having a free education in Britain now. What we're witnessing in country after country is, countries which sound so democratic and freedom-loving, like Holland, like Sweden, like Denmark, have got populist parties in who are basically saying, liberal freedoms for the Danish. And if you're not Danish, that's a racial concept of Danish. It means that it isn't just citizens' rights that matter with a passport and a legal right to stay in a country. You have to have something about you which makes you racially and culturally belong. And look at the civil rights struggle in America since 1945. If you look at the incredible struggle that's been going on for gay rights, for black rights, for all these different female rights, etc., this is the process of liberalization of democracy. And what Trump is doing is deliberalizing democracy. And this, I'm arguing something strong here. I think that the deliberalization of democracy is far more dangerous than fascism today. Where is the real fascism now? It's in terrorist attacks like Breivik and Brenton Tarrant in New Zealand. It's in fantasy fascists on the web. It's in people dressing up with Nazi uniforms. They're so peripheral to mainstream politics. But look what Netanyahu. And now, let's be very clear. I'm not anti-Semitic and I'm not anti-Israel, but I'm viciously anti the hijacking of Israel by a extreme right-wing coalition between religious and secular extremists. And I don't care if this is a podcast and people hear that. Why? Because without being a fascist state, what Netanyahu's right-wing coalition has been able to do legally is do something in Gaza which I don't think we have words for. What they in plain sight, in the eyes of the international community. He could never have got into power if he was a Nazi. I mean, even if he was just a very complicated Israeli form of fascism, he could never have got in. But unfortunately, now the deliberalization of democracy to a point where things are done by a democracy which are actually reminiscent exactly of what happened in Nazi Germany. That is the main threat.
But it's wearing the clothes of democracy. There's an election, so it wears the clothes of democracy.
Yeah. I mean, Putin has actually broken with that. He tried to have an illiberal democracy, but it's so patent now because he has perpetuated his presidency, and the pretense is almost gone.
Well, we have more questions, but we do need to have a break because people need to go to the loo and to get a drink and have and recover from what you've said. What I'm hearing is, in a democracy, progress, like your mortgage, can go up as well as down. So we're going to have a little break. Go grab a drink, go to the loo, do whatever you need to do, and come back. And then we're going to throw over to you for some questions. Then please, a big round of applause for Roger, Desiree. We'll see you after the interval. Hello and welcome back. Thank you for coming back. I always think if you love an audience, let them go. If they come back, they're yours. If they don't, lock the doors. Now,
questions.
We have got some more questions on our boards, but we thought we'd throw to you first. Yeah. Who would like to ask Roger a question? We've got somebody here.
What can we do?
Okay.
Very good.
Beautiful.
Yeah. There we are. Yes.
Well, you mean not to make things worse? Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, this is such a sort of complicated answer. I believe that anybody who feels empowered to stand up against the forces of deliberalization, of the war against humanism, the war against humanity, with all its subcompartments, women and children and the poor and all that sort of stuff, it depends where you are in life and in society. I mean, I'm at this moment, I'm being what's called a public intellectual. I mean, I'm just a blooming academic from Oxford Brookes University, but I accepted this because I love the idea of bridging this massive gulf between academia, journalism, politics, and so-called, ordinary people. I mean, you're obviously not ordinary people, but in this moment, we're outside that sort of space. Now, if I've got a potential because of my specialism to come here, and you all here, everybody here has got, you're at some point in your life, and and whether you've got a job or you haven't or whatever, if you've got children, that's an incredibly important role. And if you're a friend of somebody with children or you're a carer or whatever you are, you have. If you see we're engaged in a battle against these this isn't fascism as a block thing. I mean, it's easy when tanks roll in and people are in uniform, but we're up against very insidious forces which are really, they're taking the idea of humankind and they're breaking it up into our kind and that kind. And there's a very interesting verbal thing here that when we say I am kind to you, it means I am treating you as one of my kind. And unkind, now if you think of the French, of the word generous, it comes from the French généreux, of your kind, gen. And the ability of human beings to divide humanity into us and them is at the heart of what's called radical right-wing populism. That is what Trump is technically, apart from being a bastard. Which is not a very technical term. And anyway, it's an insult for people born out of wedlock. So I think that there's a short answer is that whatever you are, whoever you are, whatever your gifts are, whatever your family situation is, etc., you can do. Why? Recognize the threat, the force. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a long answer, but it's an important answer. Primo Levi. Primo Levi was a brilliant chemistry student picked up in Val d'Aosta when he was working for the resistance against what's called Nazi fascism. Ended up in Auschwitz, survived Auschwitz because at a certain point when they were doing the appel, where you stood in the freezing cold and were counted, we need anybody here an industrial chemist? Yeah, he survived because he was an industrial chemist and he spent that winter in a laboratory. All his friends died, etc., etc. And he then survived because he got ill just before the death march, and the Russians found him in the hospital. And he didn't die. Lost all his friends, blah blah blah. And so he wrote this book, If This Is a Man, about survival in Auschwitz and the death of humanity and the attempt to destroy humanity by the Nazis, because before they destroyed their bodies, they destroyed their souls and their humanity. But there were people who resisted that. And in a school edition of This Is a Man, he wrote an afterword where I think this is really important. In every part of the world, wherever you begin by denying the fundamental liberties of mankind, of humankind, and equality among people, all people, you move towards the concentration camp system. And it is a road on which it is difficult to halt, road to Gilead. A new fascism, with its trail of intolerance, of abuse, and of servitude, can be born outside the country and be imported into it, walking on tiptoe and calling itself by other names. Or it can loose itself from within with such violence that it routs all defenses. At that point, wise counsel no longer serves, and one must find the strength to resist. Now, I would say what's happened with Trump and company is that it's not fascism that's tiptoed in, but the deliberalization, the dehumanization of our liberal democracies has tiptoed, and it's continuing to tiptoe into our countries through people like Farage, but also through even the left talking about being a stranger in your own country. This force of dehumanization is tiptoeing in, and you will encounter it in different ways, in different prejudices, in different moments, and in that point you have to take a stand. And that does not mean blowing things up or fighting, but it means certain confrontations when you witness bullying or dehumanization in your own private life, but also the type of jobs you take and the way you can change the ethos in the place of work and the way you can actually notice people in the streets and make differences. Our power is fantastic. Democracy, through the work of so many amazing people, has been liberalized. We are witnessing like a treacle, like a sludge spreading. And we can actually push it back. There's a pushback in America. I hope to God there's a pushback in Britain. I mean, where the hell are we going with this sort of mess? So that's my short answer. Takes it's an academic short answer. It's take stock of your individual situation, realize you're growing. I'm 78, you're much younger. And I don't want to get sentimental about it, but I mean, whatever you've got or whatever you haven't got, you are in a position to act. And of course, if you are a politician or if you're a comedian, look what these two are doing. Fantastic. I mean, it's just wonderful to take something. Incidentally, I went to one of the original comedy clubs with Alexis Saley.
Alexis Saley, yeah. Used to be
and he was fantastically political. I mean, at one point, he became Bertolt Brecht and all this sort of stuff. I mean, it started off radical. And of what capitalist society does, and I'm not a Marxist, but sometimes they're bloody right, is it commercializes, it anodynes, it makes everything that is a liberating thing, suddenly somebody sees a market value in it, it goes, and then comedy just becomes a commercial thing. These two are back to the original spirit of British alternative comedy. I loved it, and it was such a privilege to be there.
Can I just say as well that we did a big open space day with Road to Gilead with people coming up with grassroots ideas. And we also want to start something called the 3.5% Club. There's a political scientist at Harvard called Erica Chenoweth, and they have, through study, discovered that if 3.5% of the population consistently protest, it's very difficult for an administration to hold out. And that's doable. That's only 2.5 million people in this country. So we want to start that because what I notice now is people are saying, what are we going to do? How are we going to move the needle? Yes. And it is not arguing with people who are already lost to the far right. It is absolutely activating the apolitical middle. Half the people in this country do not vote because they think there is nothing in democracy for them. They are disenfranchised, they've never engaged, or they did engage and they gave up. Those are the people, there are a lot of good people who are just doing the school run, trying to afford the groceries and getting home and, watching the traitors. And those people can be politicised and they can understand that life can be better. And those are the people we need to reach, and we need absolute proper projects and outreach to reach them. And they need to be attractive, fun, funny, just magnetic. It can't just be shouting at people, because as much as we would like to shout people into a place of compliance, we can't, because what is that? What's shouting people into a place of compliance? It's everything we stand against. It's autocracy.
It's bloody fascist.
Exactly. Any other questions?
Can I just say that you actually in this moment are a sort of community, but your community defined not by wearing uniforms nor going Sieg Heil. You're defined by
not yet. You haven't seen the end of the show.
But we turn it into a musical number. It's going to be great.
I've forgotten the words of the Horst Wessel-Lied, but there we are. But you take an energy from a situation like that and you inject it into those moments of loneliness or just casual encounters with people, and not by lecturing and hectoring, but just by steering conversations. One of the greatest regrets of my life, I spent so many years as an idiot young male colluding with toxic masculinity. The term didn't exist. I was walking around toxic. I didn't know I was toxic. It's like having BO and not knowing, I think, shit. I'm toxic. Beware, But I do. There were missing concepts. There weren't people. There weren't women. Honestly, God, I don't know what I'd done if I'd met you two all those years ago. So
we would have eaten you alive, Roger. Let's be honest.
And you would have thanked us.
You would have loved it.
But you are. But I mean, you are in the much work. Well, now. I grew up not knowing about climate change and all sorts of terrible things that I didn't know were going on, and all the atom tests and my country was doing in Australia because the Aborigines didn't exist. Blah 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 blah. We know now. We mustn't let it make us feel impotent and disempowered. We must use that knowledge from moments like this, which is probably why you're here anyway. This is really palingenesis. This is rebirth of your better self, which you can take out there and know that you really do have a role. Because though we've really...
Yeah, it's fine.
We're in the process of destroying the biosphere. We're in the process, one of the worst things about the right-wing populist right all over the world. There's this absolute perverse mentality that denies climate change. Yeah. How is humanity going to get a collective communal response as a species to the fact that we're not just destroying our own habitat, but the habitat for all life? I mean, so we are really engaged in a battle I didn't even know existed some time ago. And the fact that it's not the fascism that's the threat empowers us, because we are living in a democracy. Fascism is out there somewhere. Farage is here, you know, and so I think that we have to, it's very un-British this, but you have to start engaging with people and talking to people, and not just talking about the bloody weather, or if you do talk about the weather, you link it to climate change. And
Any other questions? Anyone else got a question? Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes, there's one here, there's one there, there's go on.
Yeah, a nice looking lot without the lot.
I know you haven't got all night, but can you say just a bit about why illiberalisation and dehumanisation has become so popular just at the moment?
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is it now. I'm not. I may be a sort of expert on fascism. This is really off the cuff. I mean, and I'm not an expert on this, but I would like to suggest a link to what happened in the 1930s. Why did fascism emerge in the 1930s? Because there'd been a terrible First World War, millions dead. Society tried to grieve with monuments and everything, but it was all very hollow. Then economies collapsed. There were demobilized soldiers. The whole myth of belonging to a progressive civilization was wiped out by the First World War. You get Spengler writing The Decline of the West, Der Untergang des Abendlandes, the sun of civilization is setting. In that mood of total pessimism, you either became, if your DNA was right, you became a communist and tried to actually get rid of capitalism as the enemy of the people, or you were seduced by ideas of national renewal, national regeneration. Mosley tried to create a new party, didn't work, so he went fascist. Fascism appealed to people who could not, I mean, T.S. Eliot says human beings cannot bear too much reality. Millions of people have a limited tolerance of just how awful the world is and how chaotic the world is. And then that's when what the French call les grands simplificateurs, the great simplifiers, come in with us. Die Juden sind unser Unheil. Everything is down to the Jews. Everything you say is Jewish, and even Negro music is Jewish, and Jewish music is Negro. And they talked about the Asphaltkultur, the asphalt culture. Everything's being macadamized over, and what we need is to go back. That's hence all the stuff about German clouds and German soil and German everybody sort of back to nature and all that. So this suddenly was like a solution. Hitler told people what was wrong. Now, what's happening now? Well, it's not like the interwar period. It's the most weird collapse of civilization, because if you think the economic problems are bad now, you go back to Germany in 1929. I mean, it was just unbelievably horrific. I mean, it's terrible now for millions of people, but not at the same level. And there is, you know, social media and people have phones and all that sort of stuff. So, but nevertheless, there's a massive existential crisis going on in society, which is both spiritual and psychological, but it's also highly concrete. We've got talk of war. We've got a war in Europe. We've got Gaza going on. We've got Sudan going on. People feel helpless. People feel drowned in all these issues. And then we've got somebody coming along saying it's all because Brussels has taken our sovereignty. Now you have to be pretty think that.
Roger, no. Can you rephrase that for the podcast, because I cannot air that. You have to be.
So no, that is ableist. Yes, sorry, no.
Yes.
Okay,
I know.
cut that.
I know
you're right.
You're a different generation, but no.
You have to be an unsophisticated thinker to. To attribute the collapse of Britain to Brussels or mass migration, especially if anybody's been ill, how you hardly meet an ethnic British person actually dealing with you. I mean, I'm so grateful to the fact I no longer live in the type of world I was born into in 1948. But the fact is that for millions of people, I'd say probably about a third of the population in every single democracy, between a third and a half in every single liberal democracy in the world, are attracted by a party or movement which is not part of the established party system and is offering what seems to be like really good ideas to put the world right. They're not nasty, they're not fascists, they're not psychos, they're not psychopaths. Only some of the leaders are. But and so I think it's down to there's a word, if you want to really destroy a pub conversation, it's called anomie. It's Émile Durkheim, French sociologist, tried to work out what was going wrong with late 19th century society when people were going on about decadence, décadence, that was even before the First World War. And he created this word. Nomos is the idea of a law or principle or order in the world. Anomie means being without that. He wrote a book on suicide, linking depression, mental illness, and despair, which was becoming rife in urbanized societies in the late 19th century, so long ago, late 1890s, to anomie, the fact that people no longer had a religion, they no longer had faith, they no longer had a purpose, they couldn't understand what they were doing in the world. So I believe that deliberalization society, or what is technically, we must get a better word for it because they're not fascists, radical right-wing populists are becoming more and more established all over the world in liberal democracies because of the sheer state of the world, and that not everybody has the same tolerance of not knowing what's going on and not facing the horrible situation we're in. And that's the link between right-wing populism and climate denial. It's so terrifying, you just put it away. It's like being Prince Andrew about the planet, you know?
Yeah. Is it also just because billionaires are hoarding and hoarding and hoarding, and regular people have less and less and less, and then those same billionaires own a newspaper which goes, I think it's the brown people's problem, and I don't...
Yeah, that's the thing of like these harsh economic conditions are being created by a couple of absolute thieves who are just larceny.
Migrants taking all our jobs and houses.
They're pointing at migrants while
but
ripping
they're pointing
you
at migrants, but they are in fact fleecing us and fleecing us and fleecing us. And it used to be, you know, when I moved to Camden, most of those shops and bars and restaurants were owned by local people, and they did the thing, and that was enough for them to pay their mortgage and look after their kids. Now they're all owned by billionaires. They have replaced everything on our high street by some fucking conglomerate. Yeah. All that money goes up. And so now, instead of people going, if I work a bit harder, I can have a bit more, now you can work hard, you can have a side hustle, you can have a second side hustle, and you still can't get a mortgage.
In my late old age, I've become very sceptical about the compatibility between liberal democracy and capitalism.
Yep.
But the solution for me is not to be a communist partly because of the actual reality. It's called actually existing socialism in communist societies. But I've spent quite a bit of time in Scandinavia, and there's a massive public consensus for distribution of wealth and power and long-term thinking, and they don't think of it in terms of liberal democracy, they call it social democracy. And it's so sad that we had a liberal democratic party, and we've got all these various terms in England, but I think that the only solution is not a communist, totalitarian, green society. It's certainly nothing to do with the far right, but it is to move the dial or move the spectrum away from liberal democracy, which is all about rights, towards social democracy, where you have a proactive redistribution of wealth and power and a commitment to the salvation of the planet, but using freedom. I mean, do you think this moment could exist in the Third Reich or in the fascist society? Even in America now, there are moments like this. There's the most amazing literature. There's fantastic songs and everything.
So is the time to act now before it becomes so authoritarian and palatine?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, we see the train coming down the tracks, you know. There's a slow train coming.
Did you have a question? We're going to have to try and now we've got to get out, so we need to answer these questions more quickly.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's not your fault. I do it too.
I'm mansplaining.
No, you're not mansplaining. You're explaining. Mansplaining is when you're standing at a bus stop talking about fascism, and a man who doesn't know anything about it leans in and goes, "What you've misunderstood." If we invite an expert to come in and he takes the train from Oxford, that's explaining. Yes.
Well, I won't do it on the way back.
I think you already answered the majority of my question, but just more focus on Europe. Is Europe facing a revival of fascism, or from your perspective, do you think is more like, are we witnessing a democratic transformation driven by insecurity?
Yeah.
And what does this mean for women and minorities?
Yeah, well, I can't answer all that because that's far too long. But what I would say, because I've used all the time and oxygen up. But what I would say is every country I know, my wife's Italian and spent a lot of time there, etc. There's a battlefront between liberal Democrats and illiberal Democrats. Slovakia's on the edge. Hungary might get rid of Orban next time. Poland is fascinating. It moves between. I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, even Holland. Every country, all these countries that you assume, they're all no, they've all got their version of what's going on here. I don't think there's dangerous fascism, but I do think I'm waiting for a real serious pushback. I think if only everybody in Europe could see that this is our fascism. I mean, the anti-fascists in the 20s and 30s could see what was happening. I mean, there's the most incredibly visionary books being written about the threat of fascism before Hitler came along. But we're not picking up because it's a bit like one of these sort of DNA. Democracy is so much in our DNA, we don't recognize it as a threat. It's like the difference between a psychopathic serial killer and an average predatory bloke. The predatory bloke doesn't look like he's going to ruin your life because he's like a familiar part.
Every time.
He bloody will.
Every time.
So let's stop being worried about fascism. I mean, it's a horrible thing, but it's very peripheral. But let's be seriously worried about the battlefront between liberal democracy and anti-liberal. And it's actively anti. Look what Trump is doing to libraries, to universities, to freedom of speech, to
LGBTQ plus people,
everybody. I mean, it's fighting a war. And with the institutions of liberal democracy, the law courts, the highest points of the law, they know the positions to occupy. Please forget fascism, but do focus on the quality of democracy.
Can I ask you, very quickly, because we've got to finish, you said you wanted to talk about Daleks.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to give you a metaphor, which is
just for the people at home.
A deep core metaphor about why fascists are so misogynist, and this comes down to my early experience of Doctor Who and Daleks. The Dalek is a dustbin with a phallic projectile, but inside it's just a blob, an amorphous, horrible blobby thing which needs a dustbin to move around. Now that for me is a metaphor for a totally extreme male chauvinist. Why? Because, and this is illuminated by a wonderful book called Male Fantasies, which is not about sex at all. It's about the mentality of the Nazi high-ups based on great empirical research. What he shows is that these people, he shows it empirically, only became in a sort of way human when they were in a uniform. Take the uniform off and they reverted to being a blob. Because their sense of, they were, in the terms he used, not yet born. They weren't yet born, so they felt good in a uniform and they couldn't dance. And so what...
Is that the thing, Nazis couldn't dance?
No, they can't rave. They're absolutely rubbish.
Yeah.
I mean,
they can't rave? Yeah. Wow.
They can dance badly to swing, but they can't do jazz. I mean, jazz, anyway, that's another...
So many levels.
I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah, that goose step is not a
you
move.
must do look up on YouTube Hitler and Gangnam Style, the parody of the end of the film Der Untergang, but that's another story. So
not what I thought it was going to be.
Here's the link. Why are blobs frightened of women? Because they can only feel fully human in an illusory way, where everything is regimented and fixed and is in specific boxes. Women are absolutely unboxable, and that terrifies them. So they...
Unboxable. Okay, so that's our new merch. Unboxable.
There's a song, is it? Unboxable.
Unboxable you.
Unboxable
you. Can I recommend, before we go, Roger Griffin's Fascism, A Quick Immersion? And on the front it says, this is the book George Orwell was waiting for in 1944.
Yeah, you told me in a dream.
That is the one that finally offers a clear and generally accepted definition of fascism. It's a short book where you can kind of get all of this stuff. I've bought it on Kindle. And you can really kind of hoover it up. There are some other excellent books he's written on fascism as well if you want to go a deeper dive, but I know everyone's busy, so if you've only got time for a short one, Fascism, A Quick Immersion. Yes. Quick is in the title.
Just a dip.
I'll
just
give
a
all
dip.
the royalties to the Theatre of Comedy, okay?
Oh, great. Museum of Comedy, that's so nice.
I get 5p a copy, so don't worry.
Excellent. The Museum of Comedy will thank you.
Yes.
Desiree, have you got anything to plug?
Yes, I'm currently on tour. My show, The Golden Wrath, has probably 8 more shows into March, depending on when you are now watching this or later listening to this. But you can get tickets at DesireeBurch.com. It's got some of the stuff I said tonight and a lot more. I'd love to see you guys there.
Excellent. And that is around the country?
Yes,
this is going
it
out?
is, yes.
So DesireeBurch.com, check out. You'll have a fantastic time going to see Desiree's full stand-up show. Somebody sent me something tonight that I just promised I would say. Let me just have a quick look. It's Keith Brindle, and he sent me Christians Against the Far Right. Keith, where are you? Here. Great. Can you tell us what you're doing? So, Keith, so when people say, what can I do? Keith's doing something. Keith, what are you doing?
I think it takes something from what Roger was saying about, like, in the context that you're in, doing something with the context that you're in. So I'm a white heterosexual male. It'd be great if you could read the thing from Alan Rock and the Christians there that are responding. So there are a group of us, a large group of us that are kind of, as Christians, horrified by the idea that
of Christian nationalism.
Our faith is being used, misused, abused to
exclude,
to create fear, to justify racism, basically. And I've got friends that are working in Birmingham and Alum Rock. Tomorrow there's a UKIP planned walk for Jesus. It's nothing but that.
Jesus would not go on that walk, though. Guys,
how big are the crosses? I want to know.
Yeah, he'd be a million miles from it. There's a wonderful community of Muslims and Christians and just local people that have got together and have put out a brilliant statement.
So I've got the statement here, if you'd like to hear it. As faith leaders in a diverse community in East Birmingham, we are concerned by reports of an upcoming far-right political march in our area being framed as a Christian march. The right to protest peacefully is an important part of life. However, the news of this march during the period of Ramadan and Lent has left many in our community feeling afraid. The message of compassion, including peacefully caring for those around us, is central in both Christianity and Islam. Together, we reject the use of Christian messages and symbols by people far from working for unity in our communities, are seeking to sow division and misunderstanding and to intimidate others. Churches, mosques and other places of worship have been a positive part of the landscape of East Birmingham for many years. And as faith leaders, we will continue to work together regardless of background or faith to welcome, serve and uplift all our community with compassion and respect, together for Ward End and Alum Rock.
Hallelujah.
The more we can come together to keep Christian nationalism out of our churches, the more we can come together. We're going to do a show with Lucy Winkett, who was on the show, who's the rector at St James's Piccadilly. We're going to do a show at the church, in the church. The more we can do for to come together in these spaces and bring warmth and positivity and joy and comedy and music and
our
whatever
apolitical
else.
Neighbours who might just need a little night out and to be brought in.
Absolutely. And bring in anyone on your WhatsApp group who doesn't talk about this stuff and invite them to these things. Listen to the podcast, share an episode with someone in your WhatsApp group if you think they'd like it. You can share this one. You can say, oh, you could hear me laughing here, or you could hear me asking a question. Come along. If you'd like to know more about Road to Gilead, just go to guiltyfeminist.com and sign up for the mailing list, and you will hear wherever and whenever we're doing something. You've been a truly, truly wonderful audience.
Can I say one final thought?
You can.
There's a thing called the Balm of Gilead. It's parodied in the Atwood novel. It's meant to be something that creates harmony and balm for the soul. And I would like to suggest that by coming to the Road to Gilead, what you walk away, the good feeling you have, not just about yourself or the evening, but about humanity and your determination to do something about the terrible things happening, is the balm, actually, of coming to something like this. And it's genuine balm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think someone in the audience had a small orgasm then.
Yes.
You have been a wonderful audience. This has been quite a long show, and you've been just so amazing and committed and engaged. And I thank you so much. Please come along to our future upcoming shows. Can I, first of all, have a big round of applause for everyone at Museum of Comedy?
Hey.
The incredible Desiree Burch. The wonderful Professor Roger Griffin.
You're my favourite student.
And your good selves, some people are saying you're the finest audience of your generation. I've been Deborah Frances-White. We've been the Guilty Feminist, the Road to Gilead Project. Thank you so much and good night. You have been listening to The Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Frances-White. Guest co-host Desiree Burch and our very special guest, Professor Roger Griffin. Recording engineer was Grundy Lizimbra. The Guilty Feminist theme tune was composed by Mark Hodge. The producer was Tom Salinsky for the Spotted Daily Shop. Thanks to Gina Decio, Zainab Mohammed, Deb Sedgwick and everyone at the Museum of Comedy, as well as all of you for listening. For more information about this and other episodes, visit Guilty Feminist.